Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and warm welcome to this Canada-Finland Chamber of Commerce event, where we are featuring different businesses. This time it's for Nokia. I'm glad to see that it's pretty much full house. We had people on the waiting list and say, I want to join, and gladly, gentlemen were able to fit you all in. I'm happy also to see some of our sister chambers, members here too, from the European Chamber of Commerce, Vice President Kathy Murphy there. Also from the European Chamber, my husband Ilari there, he's actually the representative of the Finnish Chamber in UCAN. From the Belgian Canadian Business Chamber, can I get it right? Vice President Anne Popov, as well as the board member Gregory Petit. So yeah, happy to see you, and other people from all walks of life. So thank you Nokia and Jeffrey, Peter, organizing this event and inviting us to spend this night together. Prior letting our host to share about the Nokia strategy, I would like to share a small story and journey that I had with Nokia earlier on, and which actually led me where I am today. So I kind of keep Nokia responsible what has happened between then and now. Nokia is not the only known to be the best mobile network provider in the world, but also moving people around the globe, and I'm one of them. So I studied computer science in Finland in early 90s. I was there, the only girl with the other 30 boys, and no wonder that I found my husband to be from that group of fellows. Immediately after graduating in '95, I found myself working for Nokia in Oulu for a product line there. It was only 2 years after that when my bosses contacted me and say, would I be keen on working in Thailand, Bangkok, to lead a project where the product line solution was provided there as a part of a full mobile network delivery. It was a new operator who had just got their license, and they were looking to build a nationwide network there. And I still hear myself, wondering when I walk out of that room and I heard myself saying yes, without knowing nothing about the culture or the language and know nothing about the barriers, but I thought, sounds interesting, So it was a mind-blowing experience for a 25-year-old girl who had grown up in a small village in Finland with literally 100 households. So here I was suddenly surrounded by 15 million other people. And the learning curve was huge. Pretty much everything was so much different from Finland, anything from culture, religion, habits, weather, food, you name it. But let's say, most importantly, the work culture. So among others, I quickly learned that the Thai's perspective of time is very different how we Finns see that. So the assignment that I was sent to work for in 3 months, I ended up living there a full year. When the year was coming to an end, I told to my boyfriend that I'm not coming back. He better find a job with Nokia so that we can live and work on the same side of the planet. And so he did. Good boy. And very soon after that, we found ourselves in Singapore. It was supposed to be a 1-year contract, but we ended up living there almost 20 years. Wow. So at that time, I witnessed my husband to lead the network planning and optimization team with about 1,500 people who were placed in 22 different countries. And I saw what he did with the people working in that kind of environment, working in different cultures and moving from country to another all the time. Life was good in Asia, but when an opportunity arose for us to move here in Canada, we took it. But this time it was my husband who was on the driver's seat. First it was me who brought us to Asia, but now it was his job that brought us here. So I'm often joking that, are we now even? Why I wanted to share this story was that to demonstrate and remind the effect of Nokia have had and continue having in people's lives. So not only that it offers the world's best networks and connectivity, but also offers people's opportunity to work abroad, learn and grow. But not only to their employees, but also their families. Spouses may have a chance to work abroad too and gain international experience. And like our kids' case, who were born in Singapore, become global citizens who fluently speak multiple languages and adapt quickly to ever-changing situations. There are many Nokia employees here as well with the audience, in the audience with the great similar experiences as me. Give a thumbs up if you think that you can relate to my story and think that it was similar to mine. Thank you. But that was history. So we are here today to hear about the latest Nokia business events and news. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our evening host and speaker. Jeffrey Maddock is the market unit head and leader of sales for Nokia Canada and member of Nokia North America Customer Experience Senior Leadership Team. As Canada's senior officer, he also is the president of the board of directors of Nokia Canada Inc. After graduating from McMaster's University with a degree in engineering, Jeff began his career working for Bell Northern Research in Ottawa. He spent 20 years with Cisco Systems working both USA and Canada before joining Nokia in August 2020, the same day as the current CEO Pekka Lundmark. Jeff serves on the board of directors in Empower Canada, a non-profit focused on providing IT education for barriered youth, as well as being a board of chair for the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association. Jeff is fluent in English and French, and his free time enjoys coaching his son's Jacob's hockey team, which I heard is going to Finland next week. 2 weeks time. Jeff and his family are residing in Oakville, Ontario. So give us a round of applause for Jeffrey, and thanks for having us.
That was a great story. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. It's an honor to get to carry the microphone and talk about Nokia and what we're doing. And I'd prepared a few remarks, but I should start as well by saying not only do I have thumbs up, I have a similar story. When I graduated from McMaster, which is just down the road from here in Hamilton, I moved to Ottawa, where I met my now wife, Danny, and she and I decided to go on an adventure of our own. We moved to California, where we worked at a startup that was acquired into Cisco, and I then spent 20 years with the company. We lived in California, in Dallas, Texas, and we later moved back to Toronto with our son Jacob, who is an avid hockey player. And yes, we're going to Sweden and Finland with Anna. Where's Anna hiding? Anna's traveling with us. That's another funny story about how the Finnish community is connected. I mean, we met somewhat randomly last spring. I coached my son's team. We're doing our tryouts, and someone says, "Hey, there's a team from Finland here in Toronto. You must know them." And I think to myself, of course, I'm a Canadian working at Nokia for 2 years. I must know. Now, ironically, I mean, in a matter of 24 hours, I met Anna over email, and I think it just speaks to how well connected the Finnish community is. And with that in mind, I think there's a lot of travel and there's a lot of great stories to be told. I took a few notes. We were talking a little bit about what story to tell about Nokia. I certainly don't need to introduce Nokia, the company, to you. A company that's more than 150 years old at this point in time. But the story that I often tell, I'd like to give you maybe the Canadian version of what I talk about on behalf of the company, because I think it's interesting. When I started with the company 3 years ago, I had a similar job prior to joining with Cisco, where I was the service provider leader. I led a big business for the company. I got to meet with lots of different people. And when I was hired, I was given two mandates, lead the sales organization, which the mission there being to sell more product to more customers in the market. And the second being to be perhaps a brand ambassador into the market, build relationships. And that was sort of the end of the summary of what to do. There wasn't a lot of other guidance as to what that meant, but more of a blank slate, go and do with it as you see fit. I'm excited to say that 2 years ago during the pandemic, I mean, Nokia, as you likely know, was one of the benefactors of the pandemic. When people started working from home, they immediately started relying on their home internet connections. And if you're on a Bell or a Telus network in this country, you are on a Nokia piece of equipment with all certainty. So all of that fiber optic access product, or for that matter, wired internet access product, you're running on Nokia equipment, or earlier generation Alcatel equipment, a company we acquired some years ago. And so we played a significant role in connecting Canadians during the pandemic. But Finns would know that about the company. I mean, it's interesting thinking of the history. A company that started as a paper company, later in rubber and textile products. And often, I'll finish my story tonight, I'm going to show you a video in the boardroom and, as I conclude, but you know, the company is a story of a journey, I think, in terms of reinventing oneself. And the story that I talk about, having started my career with Canada's iconic company, it was called Bell Northern Research, was the research arm of the company. It was later Nortel Networks. But industries are not kind to companies. It's when companies get to a certain size and attract competition, inevitably markets get disrupted. And companies' ability to react to those markets define how successful they'll be after those disruptions. And the iPhone is credited with having completely turned telecommunications on its head in terms of what the thought of this, you know, supercomputer, as we would have once called it, that now sits in most people's pockets. It completely turned the telecommunications world on its head from all kinds of aspects. So, you know, as those things happen, Nortel, for many years, when I first moved to Ottawa, there would have been 15,000 people working for Nortel at the time. So anyone in engineering school, more often than not, you move to Ottawa. There's a huge community of new graduates, great culture, a very iconic company, and they have lots of history in inventing lots of telecommunications products. But they didn't navigate that industry turn. Added to that a little bit of financial challenges and perhaps mismanagement, and they don't exist as a form of their former self. Research in Motion is another famous Canadian company. It was sort of the next center stage Canadian iconic company. They're more directly impacted by the iPhone and what it did to the nature of what could be done on a device. And they too no longer exist in their former form. In fact, they're largely now focused just on a component of the automotive industry. They build the bus that's used in a lot of the automotive dashboards, but they still exist, just a shadow of their former self. So, you know, what happened to Nokia, who at the time in the early 2000s would have been the dominant player in mobile phone industry, arguably by far the most exposed company that existed to be disrupted by this. And if you think back in time, the moves, you know, I'm sure someone had the foresight, but they were brilliant to exit the complicated smartphone industry and sell the product set to Microsoft, allowed them to collect a war chest of assets from which they then later went and acquired a number of different companies, Alcatel, which had acquired Lucent, and the component of Siemens Network that was part of that joint venture, which is really the summary of what is the company today. Now in Canada, what's interesting to some people is we have while Nokia has a 150-year history, more than that, and success in having navigated a number of industry turns better than other really successful companies, Nokia Canada has existed in different forms for quite a number of years. In fact, the history here in Ottawa dates back probably 40 years now. I use the term 35 years, but I think it's probably approaching 40 years. It starts with an acquisition of a company by Alcatel. The company they acquired was called Newbridge Networks. And so it was a multi-billion-dollar acquisition, I want to say in 2006, I think it was, multi-billion-dollar acquisition. And that asset remains the fixture of what is our Ottawa campus. Now, we announced in October of last year with the Prime Minister and Pekka Lundmark on stage in our Ottawa campus, what amounts to $1 billion to be invested in the Canadian tech economy. We're going to reinvent that campus. Unfortunately, for having the long history means we also have buildings that were built in some cases back into the 80s and early 90s, and we're in desperate need of some renovation. So we've successfully convinced the company to invest money into the campus. We've been successful at achieving some federal and provincial funding to help us do this. And so later this year, we hope to break ground on a transformation of the campus that will be home to 3,000, hopefully more engineering students. We have about 2,000 people there today. So a 35-year legacy, 2,000 people, which may not sound like a lot of people if you think about the size of the company. I mean, what are we, 80,000 people globally? That site, interestingly enough, we have 3 business units in the company the way it's organized under Pekka Lundmark. We have the mobile business, which is the one that, which is the radios and what's connecting our iPhones. In fact, where are the ones that are on the ceiling in here? They're hidden by the soundproofing, but there's a number of Bell devices in the ceiling that are all Nokia small cell radios. Pico radios, perhaps. Mark will correct me later and tell me I got the term wrong. So mobility business is maybe the best known business. Our networking business that has all of the fiber optic access and internet routers is developed significantly from our Ottawa site. In fact, for that business, which is a $10 billion business, the Ottawa campus is the biggest site in the company for that part of the portfolio. So not only is Ottawa part of a long legacy, but it's a huge part of the current company and a very material part of what is making the company profitable today and something we're really proud of. So I tell you the story about RIM and Nortel because as we've brainstormed how to interpret our current leadership's mission about what does it mean to be a country and do things, it's our mission that Nokia Canada will be that next great Canadian tech iconic company, just like Nortel and RIM that have gone before us. And I'm excited to say that, you know, when we make these types of announcements and the media attention we've enjoyed after announcing Ottawa, some debated us internally thinking we were a little crazy for making as much noise about it because they're saying, listen, you're building a new office building. Why is anyone going to care? It helps to invite the Prime Minister to your events. Where he goes, you get more attention. But interestingly enough, we had all levels of government. We had both the political parties with the Liberals and the Conservatives on stage. They were all stood in front of our Nokia banner. And for months after that, you would have seen Nokia's names. I've had all kinds of people, you know, come up to me afterwards saying, wow, were you again in Ottawa with the Prime Minister? No, it's just the video of the Prime Minister because it was such good film reel. And then when we announced this property that you're standing in, when I first started with the company almost 3 years ago, our lease at our property we had, which was an office space for Toronto. Toronto's more of a sales office and delivery office. I asked people, you know, what should we do with the space? Our lease is expiring, should we keep it? And no one was a big fan of the property. It was out near the airport. It was convenient to access Bell's property because they're out on Creekbeck just south of the airport. But other than that being an advantage, people weren't a fan of what we had, and the pandemic was taking hold. We had no idea when we'd be next in an office, so we agreed to let the lease go, and we started this search to find, you know, what would be the next space, and frankly, with a mission in mind to figure out how are we going to attract talent into the company. We're the average age of Nokia is getting older, and over time, the only solution to that is going to be to attract the younger generation to work for the company. And so we figured we needed to be more centrally located in the city, access to transit, access to where younger students are likely to live, which is likely in this area or somewhere in Liberty Village or something to that extent, or accessible via transit. So I think we signed a lease here about a year ago and this is a brand new building. Anybody that knows this part of Toronto, you may not see it now, but if as you're leaving, there's a bunch of demolished buildings next door. That was LCBO's property. And they'd been here for many, many years. It was a one-story yellow building. At one point in time, that was their iconic LCBO retail store, and the buildings behind it that are in the process of being torn down, that was their distribution and corporate headquarters. If I have it right, they owned all of this land and they sold the land.
It was a crown land. Mm-hmm. They kind of owned it, but not 100%. Sorry.
There you go. I've never been corrected on that.
They're on the 9th floor.
They have 3/4 of the floors in here because they're the primary tenants in here. So all of their corporate people are in here now. I'll have to figure out the exact details, but they were sort of part of this equation. And I think perhaps when they decided to move out of that and move into here is how Menkes, who will develop a lot of this land around here and go forward. So there's a lot of history. And in fact, if you want to do any shopping downstairs, it's amazing to see what the LCBO has done as a retail experience. It's really quite impressive. So it's a historical location. I mean, for us, I mean, there's no question that when we walked the property and had a chance to look at the view, and frankly get to imagine what does the workplace look like. We've never mandated anywhere in the company that people have to come back to work. We're trying to inspire people to come back to work with the right use of technologies, a pretty space, a space that's a bit of a nod to Finnish. I mean, everywhere else I've been in the company are light woods, whites and blues, and sort of a sense that when you're in this space or in other Nokia spaces that you'll have a sense of it's similar to that, but maybe with a little bit of our twist, and the view really being the accent for us. We've got, I said we had 2,200 people in Ottawa. We've got about 250 employees in the Toronto region. And we've got space in this unit for about 50 people, depending on how we use the space. So it's an exciting time to be at the company, and I think just listening, Marika, to your story and the role that Nokia has played in your history, but also in the lives of many. I've met all kinds of people, and it's a privilege to get to tell our story. It's been a privilege to become a bit of a member of the Finnish community, having visited Helsinki now a number of times with various customers or Canadian government officials to meet your ambassador here in Ottawa, and it's been a really fun journey. I think there's a lot of affinity between Finns and Canadians, which I'm sure I don't need to tell you about all of that, but I'm excited. After having met Anna earlier, I remember coming back, and one of the fellow coaches, he has a son that plays for me, and he coaches another team, and he and I were winding each other up about how great an idea it was that we should go and take a whole bunch of kids to Finland. And to which more than a couple of people looked at us with a bit of a raised eyebrow. You mean Finland, right next door to Russia? And we're like, yeah, exactly.
Not only like you guys like 80 people.
Yeah. We're taking 80 people on the trip. So clearly we didn't have a lot of trouble convincing other people that it wasn't a crazy idea. And having had a chance to visit a number of times, I'm quite confident the Finns are phenomenally well prepared, as has been well storied in the press, having prepared since World War II with an unruly neighbor. So it's great to have people in our unit tonight. I would like to maybe conclude with a final thought, and I'll show you a video in the boardroom. I was in Barcelona a month ago at Mobile World Congress, which currently is the largest telecommunications show that's run in the industry. It's I don't know how many thousands of people attend it, but over the years it's become the one telecommunications show. And I've been to the show for many, many years at this point in time. And this year we announced on the Sunday evening, which is the start of the show, that we're announcing a new brand. So you'll notice on a few of our lanyards that we have a modernized logo. You'll see that it's no longer just the blue. It's a nod to the fact that the letters sort of work together in the logo, like we expect our technologies to work together. And the logo, or the slogan for the company, is how technology helps the world act together. And there's clearly a history with the mobile business, but there is also a huge desire to restate our current purpose and the role we want to play with technology. We're no longer the phone company. In fact, it's confused by the fact that Nokia brand is still on phones operated by another third party, so there still are technically Nokia phones. But we think our mission in life is far bigger at this point in time, and it's not just about building those networks. And it's perhaps no surprise that the average Canadian wouldn't know that probably in all of your homes, your internet connection is going to touch a Nokia device somewhere between your house and wherever you sent that piece of information or wherever you pulled it from. But most people would never know that. Where we expect our next act to be is really the digitization of industry. If you look across most industries, the suggestion is that only about 30% of businesses have actually digitized what they do. And the introduction of 5G technology, a technology we're world leaders in, we believe enables the ability to build networks differently and to do things in a mobile context. I think technologies most recently like Wi-Fi weren't reliable enough or quick enough in some cases to allow you to do that. So our next act, if you will, is as a Nokia, but just not as you've known us to be. We'll be very active in industry, trying to alter how they look at things, but also with a very key theme, and you'll see this tone through the video, to being environmentally conscious, that the acts that we take next, we want to do them with the intent that, one of the slogans being there's no green without digital, so the idea of how to green an industry, most simply said, could be making it more efficient. If you make a technology-heavy industry more efficient, you'll make it more green. And the final pillar is around ESG. We want, over time, to develop our social and governance aspects of who we represent as a company to be a differentiating asset for us. So some lofty goals under the leadership of Pekka Lundmark, but maybe without further ado, I'd like to invite you into our boardroom. You're just standing, it's a 2-minute video, but I'd love to have you experience the new brand and what we think it means to the industry.